Hey CPC, it's great to be back with you again. I've enjoyed reading all of the emails and the responses I get to the videos, and so please keep those coming. Never hesitate to reach out to me by email or by phone, by social messenger, by text message, however you like to communicate. I'm glad that this ministry is finding fruit in your life. I'm glad that you're connecting with it in the life that we seek to find with Jesus here at CPC. I was at a museum a couple of years ago, and I saw a kid that really exemplified how this world that we live in blurs the lines between digital and analog. There was a big white sign backlit that said "exit this way," and this kid who was about 5 or 6 years old walked up to this big sign about this big, "exit this way," big white light, and he started trying to swipe it. And it was then that I realized that we live in a world that has no distinction between the digital and the analog. Everything is interactable in the minds of someone who has only lived in this moment. And so that's part of why I want to continue with these videos as we continue to grow in the sense of connection. There is life in Jesus to be found here online. And so grace to you. I noticed that Roll Up the Rim started this week. And in maybe just another casualty of COVID, what used to feel like a spring tradition is now happening in the fall, and that's okay, and maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy in my age, but it feels a little off to me. It's supposed to be during the spring, and here it is in October. But the more I sat with that kind of discomfort and what was really bothering me about it, the more I realized this might actually just be a really great thermometer for how much things have changed in our world. When Roll Up the Rim started in 1986, Tim Hortons wanted to do it as a way to give back, to thank its customers for all the support that they've gotten. And they wanted to offer a thank you to them that just happened to coincide with the single biggest annual drop in coffee sales that was also coincidentally when the church celebrated the season of Lent. For those of you that don't know, Lent is the season that leads up to Easter, where the church would traditionally practice fasting or giving up something in sort of a spirit of penitence and preparation. And so a cynical person might suggest that Tim's was offering some kind of an alternative world to the world of the church and the world of Lent, or at least they wanted to discourage people from fasting from coffee. COVID has changed the landscape of pretty much every area of our life. And in some cases, it's really just sort of to highlight how much things have changed. In 1986, when Roll Up the Rim started, there was still some semblance of a Christian Canada that could be found. Stores were closed on Sunday by an act of Parliament. A general sense of a purity culture held Canadian content standards in check on TV. And while not at the peak it was in the 1960s, church attendance was still healthy and robust enough that when churches could move out to the suburbs or to growing new neighborhoods, people would come to them. It was the old, if you build it, they will come, Field of Dreams kind of mentality. The fact that today, in 2021, Tim's isn't worried about missing out on those sweet, sweet Canadian Christian dollars might just indicate how much things have changed in a generation. And as someone who embodies that generation, as a millennial who's grown up in the era of Roll Up the Rim, I've grown up in the middle of this sea change. Whatever else you can say about the millennial generation, we are the ones who grew up practicing the skill testing questions on the Roll Up the Rim cups for the days when we got to get that grill or whatever it is that we might actually win if it wasn't just a donut or a coffee like it always is. For a long time, I actually thought that the only reason they still taught the orders of operation in school was so that you could successfully complete a skill testing question on the bottom of a cup. And I still remember it being drilled into our heads: BEDMAS, brackets, exponents, division and multiplication, addition and subtraction. Sometimes you need to put things in the right order to get the right answer. And in 1986, the church operated on a fairly specific, kind of harsh, by today's standards, order of operations. You had to first believe the right things. You had a doctrinal statement that nearly every church held that was essential to being part of who they were. That was how decisions were made. Does this align with the doctrine of the church? Then you had to act in a way that was consistent with that doctrinal standard. You had to act in a way that at least held up the kind of specific moral patterns of the church. You had to be good, for lack of a better word. If you were right and you were good, you got to then be part of the church community. You would, to put it very simply, believe, behave, and get to belong. But as we navigate faith in a world that's changed just so much, I'm not entirely sure anymore that the same orders of operation will get us the same answer that we're looking for. We live in a world beyond belief. And even though 80% of Canadians choose not to attend religious services on any kind of a regular basis, that doesn't mean that we live in a nation or in a world of atheism. In fact, most people, if you press them on it, will choose to believe in some kind of a God. It's just that idea of God is indifferent to them. They would say it's fine for people if religion is something that helps you, but for me, it's not an essential part of being a productive member of Canadian society. It's not a necessary part of my everyday, day-to-day life. It doesn't really affect me. And so the missional church, who wants to reach out and connect with a non-Christian world, can't start with belief. We can't make belief our primary standard for finding people who are going to come and join us in the mission of Jesus, because belief isn't basic anymore. Belief is at its broadest a willingness to open yourself up to God working in your heart and your head and your hands. Belief is a sense of trust. It's trusting that there's more to this than you see, taste, smell, and feel. And so we can't start with belief. The missional church is a church who's willing to recognize how much things have changed in a generation. That the whole world has turned upside down, and so to reach a world that's upside down, maybe we need to stand on our heads. Maybe we need to be willing to look a little foolish for the sake of being a little effective. So the missional church doesn't start with belief. The missional church starts with belonging. Belonging, rather than seeking to make the people outside of the church think, act, and look like the people inside the church. The missional church seeks to figure out what God is already doing in our neighborhood, to use that as the starting point, because belonging can change the way you act. A 2020 study from the University of Vermont found a positive link between a sense of belonging and greater happiness and overall well-being among the students' population, even during a pandemic. It saw a sense of belonging connected with an overall reduction in mental health outcomes, including anxiety, depression, hopelessness, loneliness, social anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Turns out we're made to be part of a tribe. And in a world that emphasizes our self-identity and our sense of me over the sense of we, when we discover that we belong, it reorients our behavior. We change because we realize that we're part of something, and when we become part of something, we want to fit in. We want to become more like the people that we're part of. The company you keep changes who you are. And when a church becomes the center, the locus, the epicenter of belonging, people tend to lead a more loving, joyful, peaceful, patient, kind, generous, self-controlled, and gentle way of being. And then out of that, how you act becomes what you believe. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu put it this way, allegedly. He said, watch your thoughts, for they become your words. Watch your words, for they become your actions. Watch your actions, for they become your habits. Watch your habits, for it becomes your character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. And while that's a little wordy, I kind of prefer the Catholic theologian Richard Rohr's take on it, basically the same thought. We don't think ourselves into a new way of living. We live ourselves into a new way of thinking. This is the order of evangelism. This is the order of operations for the missional church. We belong, we behave, we believe, in that order. And that's why I think it's so critical for our Chippewas program. That's why I've been hammering on this idea over and over again, why you're so sick of hearing about it. Because we can't watch for God in our neighborhood. We can't really be a place, the center of belonging for our community, if we don't know what God is already up to, if we don't know where God is already moving. And so that's why I'm so excited for these Chippewas this Sunday. Make sure that you are following our Facebook page to get the virtual option if you aren't able to make it on the walks and still want to participate in the Chippewas. But I'll see you on Sunday, whether it's virtual or digital or in person. In any case, take care of yourselves and know that you are blessed and you are loved. Cheers.